For centuries, people believed castles were built to protect kings. But what if they were actually designed to contain them? What if the most powerful man in Europe was actually a high-profile prisoner in his own home? Today, we're exposing the castle fraud a dark architectural secret to royals. Well, they didn't want you to see. Greetings, time travelers. When you think of the medieval king, right? You probably imagine a man absolute freedom standing atop a sun-drenched balcony, draped in velvet, ruling everything the light touches. See, we've been sold a fairy tale for centuries. I mean, a story of sprawling banquets and effortless luxury. Look closer at those massive stone walls. Those aren't just there to keep invaders out. They were meticulously designed to keep the king in. This is the good lie. The medieval castle was never truly a palace. It was a high-security bunker. While the world looked up at those towering battlements in AWE, the man inside was often looking at those same walls in absolute terror. Imagine living your entire life in space where every door is a checkpoint, every window is a narrow slit for an archer, and every hallway is a potential kill zone. The kings of Europe lived in a state of perpetual house arrest. They were surrounded by thousands of tons of cold, damp stone, trapped by the very architecture that was supposed to represent their divine right to rule. It was a masterpiece of psychological manipulation. To the peasants, the castle was a symbol of untouchable strength. To the king, it was a cage. He was the most important piece on the chessboard, which meant he was also the most restricted. In this investigation, we're going to peel back the tapestry and show you the chilling reality of life inside these stone shells. This isn't a story of royal comfort or fairy tale endings. This is a story of ultimate containment. We're going to find out why the most powerful men in history were actually the most desperate captives of their own design. Welcome to the fortress prison. Forget the fairy tales, time travelers. I mean, you've been fed a lie written in stone. You look at a medieval castle and see a monument to power, right? Wrong. It's not a palace. It's a maximum security cage. The official history is just a polished joke. And today, well, we're ripping the mask off. Look at the gray hall, the gold, the silk, the flickering torches. You see, it's all a stage. A king sitting on a golden throne, looking untouchable? That's exactly what he wanted you to think. Look at the blueprints. The real story isn't in the tapestries, it's in the tracks. Why are the most aggressive security features turned inward? Look at the stairs tight. Now, winding. Only one man can pass at a time. The spiral turns right, getting defender at the top the ultimate killing advantage. You see, these weren't built to stop an army. They were built to stop a domestic assassination. Those heavy iron doors, a bolt from both sides. Think about that for a second. I mean, if the king is protected, why is he literally locked in? The pattern is clear paranoia. The barbarians weren't the problem at all. The man standing right behind his chair, holding the wine, that was the real threat. But wait, it gets darker. When we look at the king's private bedroom, we found one single, chilling detail that the history books refuse to mention. A detail that proved the king wasn't just afraid of his court, he was terrified of his own shadow. Welcome back, time travelers. Imagine waking up and realizing the walls are staring back at you. This isn't a horror movie, it's what I call the internal siege. Historians are finally admitting that medieval castles weren't just fortresses. They were high-tech panopticons. Look closer at these royal apartments, right? See those stone mullions? Hidden behind them are squints. Tiny, angled holes bored through feet of solid rock. These weren't for spotting invaders, you see. They were for the king's own guards to watch him sleep, to monitor his visitors, to ensure he was never truly alone. Wait, it gets even darker. You've been told spiral staircases go clockwise to right-handed defenders, right? That's the lie they told us in school. Look at where they are positioned. Deep inside the private quarters. Why? Because the king wasn't just scared of an army at the gates. He was terrified of a knife in the back from his own inner circle. These stairs were tactical traps, designed to give his protectors the upper hand if he ever tried to run. Every corridor was a trap. Every chamber was a stage. We call it the divine right of kings, but the architecture tells a different story. Permanent house arrest. Every whisper, every deal, every private moment. Recorded by Shadow Court. The king wasn't the master of the castle. He was its most valuable specimen, a live rat in a stone cage. But as we peeled back the layers, we found something that shouldn't exist. One specific room that proves the king was being managed by a power he was too afraid to even name. You want to see it? Stop. Look at these guards. Do they really look like they're protecting the king? Or is he actually their prisoner? Welcome to the Gilded Cage era. Time travelers. Just imagine being the most powerful man on earth only to realize the pipes outside the bedroom aren't for assassins. They're for you. You see, this wasn't a rebellion. It was a slow-motion hijack of the throne. Take the chilling case of Edward II. In the 14th century, Berkeley Castle wasn't a palace, it was a high-tech state trap. Why kill a king when you can turn him into a puppet? Think about it. Killing a king causes civil war. Controlling a king? Now, that's the ultimate power play. Edward was shoved into what we call a stone rib cage. His security detail took sacred oaths to protect him. Here's the real conspiracy. At paychecks? They weren't coming from the king anymore. They were signed by the very barons who wanted him silenced. Architecture itself became a weapon. I mean, we see royal apartments with iron bolts located on the outside of the door. Look at some of the battlements stopped looking at the horizon for invaders, they started looking inward. At the courtyard, Edward II was no longer a sovereign. He was a specimen. Fine wine, yes. Rich silks? Sure. Zero agency. Every letter intercepted. Every whisper recorded by a shadow court. But wait, it gets even darker. As we peel back the stone layers of these prisons, archaeologists found something that shouldn't exist. Deep in the foundations are hidden voids, with no defensive purpose. What were the nobility hiding from the king? The truth is buried in the dirt, you know, and it's more terrifying than the cage itself. You see, these hidden voids, they weren't intended for the king's enemies. They were for his secrets and for the eyes and ears that monitored his every move. When we look at these massive structures today, we see the power and empire. For the mind wearing the crown, well, the view was much darker. Every thick wall was a barrier between him and the people he supposedly ruled. I mean, every loyal guard was actually a jailer paid by a nobility that simply couldn't afford a king with his own ideas. The true genius of the castle fraud lay in its luxury. It was, you know, a gilded cage designed to distract. If the king is surrounded by servants, fine wine, and impenetrable stone, he feels like a god. But a god who cannot leave his temple is just a prisoner by another name, right? The nobility didn't want a leader. They wanted a symbol they could lock away while they pulled the strings of the entire continent from the shadows. The grandeur was an orchestrated illusion, a mirage of authority that kept the monarch's world small. while the Lord's world grew. Next time you look at a castle ruin, time travelers, don't just see a palace of glory, see a monument to royal paranoia and the first high-security prisons ever built. The castle fraud changes everything we know about the European monarchy. It reveals a history where the crown was often a heavy burden, and the throne room, well, it was merely the center of a very expensive cell. Remember, in the Game of Empires, the tallest tower is often just the hardest cell to escape. We expose the truth behind the stone. Now it's up to you to look closer at the ruins of history. Keep investigating, and don't let the history books lie to you. Subscribe to join our next investigation into the shadows of the past.